Morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. I'm glad the simulation allowed me to be here this morning.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And if somehow you had tripped on your way out, we could have rebooted it, and it would have been all right. So we're going to talk obviously a lot about eBay and e-commerce, but what people may not know is that Devin, until about 5 years ago, was the CEO of Reuters. So he's in the media business, the news business. And for the people we have up here in the news business, we've been asking what we call the Peter Thiel question. And he actually, when I ran into him yesterday or the day before, said, "You got to ask me the Peter Thiel question." So
well,
the question is, you know, the press has always been subject to libel lawsuits and other kinds of constraints. But is it right for a billionaire to put large amounts of money secretly behind lawsuits, seemingly to settle a personal score, and to try to put a publication out of business?
I'm going to answer the broader question, which is, I think I side with a free media and a free press. I think we've got to be very careful. It is a nuanced argument. There's always a pull and a tug, but something feels like it's different. All First Amendment rights aren't created equal. There's a strong public interest in a free press. And rich and powerful people have First Amendment rights too. But if you allow that to be unfettered, and what that causes is a real stifling of voices and a real concentration of media, which it might, we're not going to like the result of that. And that really goes back all the way to the Constitution. So I don't want to get into all of that, but we've got to be really careful that powerful voices don't knock down what I call divergent points of view. You know, this immediate kerfuffle, I don't like the media actor. I don't read what they do. I don't find it particularly valuable, but that's irrelevant. What's more relevant is that you shouldn't be allowed to drive media companies from expressing divergent points of view. And I think we've got to be really careful about that.
Thanks.
So e-commerce right now growing about 15% in the US, something like that. Amazon's US business, core retail, maybe double that. eBay right now, low single digit percent.
6%, yeah.
Xing out foreign exchange.
Yeah.
And so what, do you get up to average e-commerce growth at some point? What's going on right now in the business that you're at this point?
I think we'll grow faster, but I think the relevant metric for us, I don't think e-commerce is a relevant metric anymore. I think it's commerce. About 2 years ago, the line between digital commerce and physical commerce became almost meaningless. You know, if I go into a store and I scan something and I walk out and buy it online, which lots of people do, is that commerce or e-commerce? And if I look at something, if I buy something on eBay and pick it up in a store, is that commerce or e-commerce? That's the pie. It's huge. It's $17 trillion. And if I look at our growth, yeah, I want to grow faster. I'll get to what my priorities are in my first 10 months as CEO. And short-term growth right now is not my priority. My priority is fixing our core issues so that eBay is competitive for the next 20 years.
So let's go there. What are your main core issues right now?
Let me just start by explaining what our business is. I think everybody knows eBay, but they may not know what our business is today. This is continues to be one of the most successful businesses on the internet. eBay is 165 million active customers, shopping close to 1 billion items from over 20 million active sellers. If you look at the last, say, 12 months, our sales, what we call GMV, as you know, roughly 90 billion. So I think there's still a perception of eBay that it's small in its auctions and it's kind of long tail items. The reality is eBay is the world's most sophisticated and large product catalog. Everything in the world, just about, is sold on eBay. And it's different than what many competitors that you mentioned and many in the e-commerce space are. It's unique items, it's incredible deals. people shop eBay differently. We're not a utility player. They tend to shop eBay for their passions, if they're going out for fashion, if they are, that's what eBay is.
So at one point, I knew for sure what eBay was, which was unique, authentic items you probably can't find in a lot of places.
Yeah, and it still is.
Over time, you've done more full price
Yep.
and working with big brands now.
Yep.
And to me, that's confused me a bit, but what does it stand for today?
So I still think it stands for incredible unique items and incredible deals, even on brands. So if you look at our product catalog, there's more choice, more conditions, and more, just more breadth than any other competitor. And that's the essence of what eBay is. You know, if you need a printer cartridge in an hour, you're probably not going to shop eBay. But if you're going to buy a phone, an iPhone 7 when it comes out for yourself, but your son's going to lose his phone, so you might buy the 6, or you might buy a manufacturer refurb, or you might buy a brand new phone that was unboxed. That's eBay. Every version across every SKU, and that's the essence of what we've been great at, and that's why we sell $90 billion worth of stuff a year. So it's very broad, but it's very deep, and that's the essence of what I need to do to make eBay great is to be less like others and not more. I think there's been a view that, well, you've got to be like Amazon. I don't have to be like Amazon. I don't have to be like anybody else. The world doesn't need an almost as good Amazon. The world needs a better eBay, and that's what they're going to get.
So speaking of better eBay, can I go on eBay and use Apple Pay?
You can't use Apple Pay today because you can use credit card or PayPal, but
Whoa. That's not because. I mean, can I use Apple Pay? Can I use Android Pay?
You can use Android Pay. We haven't integrated Apple Pay yet, and we probably will. You can use lots of different payment mechanisms, not just PayPal.
It seems to me that, you know, when you split from PayPal, you split
Yeah.
in a corporate legal sense,
Yeah.
but you kept PayPal around. If you didn't know what had happened, you would think, okay, well, PayPal is still a big piece of this. Steers you toward PayPal.
Consumers have any huge amount of payment choice on eBay. You do not need to use PayPal on eBay. You can use any major credit card, just like most e-commerce players. We have a strong commercial agreement with PayPal. We'd like you to use PayPal.
Which requires that 80% of volume.
Doesn't require it, just incentivizes it.
Right, but look, we can argue about semantics. The point is, I as a customer am pushed toward eBay as the preferential or the natural way to pay. Yeah,
sure.
I had the choice to pay by credit card before you split from PayPal, so
sure.
that's not new. But it's also not new. It's not like a new day has dawned and PayPal is just like sort of down there.
And you believe that other e-commerce companies don't incentivize you for the behavior that they want? You're free to pay.
Of course they do, but I'm just talking about on payments and
Sure.
PayPal.
Sure. We'd love you to use PayPal, but you don't need to. We'd love you to
And
use
you don't
PayPal.
think you're over-reliant on them?
No. I think PayPal works and it's efficient, and I honestly think that for us to really build this moat in the next 20 years, payment is the least of my issues. I've got to build a structured data catalog so I have visibility of 1 billion items. I've got to evolve my brand so that I don't get questions that say, hey, aren't you the auction place? I've got to build a shopping experience.
Used goods, I think is what I said.
You said used goods, which is a small and declining minority of what we do. So for me, those are the issues I'm focused on. Those are the hard problems eBay needs to solve to get its next 100 million customers, to get its next 90 billion of sales, and that's my priority. Payment is way down the stack of things I'm worried about.
Let's talk about a different part of the experience, which is whether or not you have to be, you know, whether the world needs like a lesser version of Amazon. The expectations that have been set after you click buy by Amazon and some others is you know when your package is arriving. There's a certain trust in that experience. What has made eBay great in the past was the marketplace model, where sometimes you don't know who you're dealing with, how the package is going to arrive. How do you think about the challenge of that part of the experience after the purchase?
I think it matters, and I think that, keep in mind, eBay used to be a very unmanaged marketplace, and now it's a highly intermediated marketplace. So we control a lot of aspects of what happens: trust, delivery, shipping. Last holiday, 2/3 of all packages that sold on eBay got delivered in 3 days. So we care about that. Now, we have a different philosophy than some others do. We don't put concrete in the ground. We think there's enough concrete in the ground. We don't warehouse items. The concrete that exists in the world are called stores. And there's a lot of existing warehouse, and there's a lot of physical locations that hold goods. We're a data company. We use data to organize the world's inventory and get you that item as fast as we can. We don't forward deploy things in warehouses and then on ship them. Now, in a world where there may be a market for instant delivery, I don't think we're going to compete there. I don't want to do everything, and that's about us being eBay. I'd rather have 1 billion unique items that arrive in 3 days than 1 billion commodity items that arrive in 1 hour. That's our business, and that's why we're unique.
That's a great line. It's a great quote, and I'm sure you mean it. But
I hope I mean it.
But here's the but. I want to follow up on Jason. 10 years ago, people were a little nervous that, I don't know who this guy is that I'm dealing with, and maybe I won't get my classic, gadget from the 80s that I really want. I've done that. I've bought stuff like that on eBay because I collect that stuff. But, you get it, it's double wrapped in duct tape, and it comes from, somewhere in Montana, and it's great. And 9 out of 10 times it's what you wanted. It's great, but it may not come for a while. You don't exactly know, and is this guy going to cheat me? All the issues. In a world where I can actually get something from Amazon that shows up, they say it's going to show up on Monday. They surprise me. It gets delivered on Sunday in front of my house. The first time that happened, I had to call my wife and say, "Oh my God, look at this." She goes, "What?" I said, "It's an Amazon box." She said, "So?" I said, "It's Sunday." She goes, "Oh yeah, that's really weird, But that's the world we live in now. Does the gap between the double duct tape thing that I'm getting maybe Thursday, maybe the next Wednesday, the gap between that and the Amazon box on Sunday matter more to you?
Note to self, I've got to speak before Bezos at the next Code conference. First of all, this tells me that brand gap is real, because that's not really the eBay that is today. So the eBay today is incredibly predictable. The rate of things going wrong, which we monitor religiously.
Well, that wasn't a thing that went wrong.
Yeah.
That was just the normal behavior.
Yeah, but if it came late, then it went wrong. To me, it's got to come on time, and on time for us is 2 to 3 days for almost all items. And more and more items are being shipped in an eBay box because we incentivize that to happen. So this is a very predictable, what I would call retail-like e-commerce experience, much more so than I think people think. And you were telling me you haven't used eBay in a while. It was cute in the early days of the internet to get this double wrapped toilet paper thing from Montana, but we sell $90 billion of stuff now.
No offense to Montana.
Yeah, somebody in Montana who runs a toilet paper factory is pissed.
I know. But, I'm sure I could get in one day from Montana some awesome thing. I know.
But again, back to the point. We sell $90 billion of stuff, and it's not tchotchkes and toilet paper. It is a very...
No, but you talked about unique items.
Sure.
That is an advantage.
Sure.
It may be declining. It may not be the biggest part of your business, but
sure.
In some ways,
it's still important.
It's a distinguishing factor for you.
It's still important, and I'd argue that if you are buying a printer cartridge and you need it now, that's one thing.
Yeah.
If you're buying the bumper on a 1947 Ford, you don't need it delivered in an hour. You need it delivered in a day or 2 days, and that's what we do. And I don't think there's going to be one company left in the world that people shop.
Can I follow up and ask you about something we've asked a lot of our speakers here? It's kind of emerged as a big theme of the conference because it's emerging as a big theme in the tech world, and that's artificial intelligence. I know you just wrote something on it. You think about it. talk to me about where you think that is, where it's going, and particularly how it applies to eBay and maybe generally to commerce.
It's really important to me, and I think it's important to our company. Predictive modeling is not new for e-commerce. For 10 years, we and all of our competitors have been trying to say, hey, people that bought this also bought this. But it was pretty crude, and it was based around inventory clustering. You know, we'd look at people that bought this, then other people look-alike models of what people bought. Something changed in the last year, and I think it's a combination of computing power, GPUs being brought online to model big data sets, and the sophistication of algorithms, which now, inventory clustering is only one factor. We're now looking at demographics and other data, and we're layering all of that on top of each other in very sophisticated predictive models. For a company like ours,
What is the customer, what's the result to the customer of
relevance,
some of that work?
Relevance. It's all about consumer relevance. Go on eBay. I want eBay to feel like it's mine. I want it to feel like it's my eBay. I don't want it to feel like it's your eBay. I want it to feel like you know me. You know whether I want a $7 scarf or a $70 scarf. You know whether I like blue or red. You know that you already know the car, so you know the bumper. It's very personal and not intrusive personal, seamless personal. And I actually think we are getting really close to that. And for us, we started working on this in a lightweight 10 years ago, but in the last year we've gotten really serious. And we're going to start deploying some things even later this year where it'll start to feel different. We can really, for us, I'd argue it's even more important than our competitors because of the breadth of our inventory. 1 billion items is an amazing advantage, and it can be a disadvantage because it can be overwhelming.
It's been a challenge desktop, it's been a challenge on mobile. You've done some things to try to fix that with discovery. Some has worked, some not so much.
It's you know, and as you know, that's why we're marching down building the world's biggest catalog, because we need to have visibility of that inventory.
Because it tends to fall down to the bottom of a silo, right? I mean,
or
things just don't get seen.
That's
they
it.
Just don't get surfaced.
That's it. And search is a tool that has marginal diminishing returns when you've got that large a commerce inventory. I think AI gives us another tool in the toolbox.
So how would this? So all right. So you have convinced me that I better start looking at eBay again.
Thank God I came to this conference.
Thank God.
One
Thank
customer
God.
at a time.
And well, you know, I mean,
eBay's,
these people paid a lot for these tickets. I might have some spare cash.
There you go.
You know.
Walt has some money.
So here's the thing. Am I going to go there and expect that you'll pop something up? Maybe not the first time, but if I go, you know, a fair number of times, you'll start popping stuff up that I would not have searched for?
So I'll tell you what you'll see today, and then what I hope you'd see a year from now. What you'll see today, which is our first experiments in this, is if you go on our homepage now and you're registered and we know anything about you.
I've been registered a long time.
Not PayPal, apparently, though. You'll start to see curation. The homepage of eBay is now curated. There's something called eBay Today. It's really interesting collections of items. We tell stories about those items. What you see won't be the same thing as Jason. What you see won't be the same thing as 160 million other people. And if you start shopping and browsing, you'll start to see recommendations that I would call are pretty good. And we measure that, and obviously that has to convert for us, and that contributes to our growth. What you may see a year from now is eBay living off of eBay. I think that for us, meaning, you know, today eBay is a place you go to our site, you go to our apps. I think of eBay as a fabric. eBay is a commerce fabric that connects buyers with inventory. So we may reside where people spend their time outside of eBay. We may reside in Facebook Messenger. We may reside in big social networks. We may reside in big messaging networks. And it may be conversational. It may take various forms which aren't registered, go to a site, go to a domain. I want to see eBay be ubiquitous where people spend their time. And to me, that's part of the big platform revolution that's not often spoken about. AI also allows this. The Internet of Things ends up being about sensors and devices. I think of it differently. I think of it as an internet that comes to you rather than an internet that you go to. And that's what I want to position eBay for in the future.
Tell me that's not a fancy name for more dumb ads
No.
that I find annoying and useless. I'm not accusing eBay of this because I don't think I've seen these from eBay, but from other companies.
I don't.
You know, I just bought that.
Me-
just bought that. This is
me,
the
an ad-
least likely moment for me to buy it again, and yet every place I go on the internet, there's an ad for it.
Well, you can't blame me for this because you told me you haven't shopped eBay in 10 years. So blame
That's
somebody
true.
else.
I'm not blaming you, but you're talking about being where I am, and I get that. Other people are trying to be where I am, Facebook, Twitter, wherever it is, but they're doing it. It's dumb.
I distinguish. If you don't express intent, and I'm in your face trying to get you to do something, that's incredibly annoying. If I express intent,
Thank you.
But if I express intent,
Right.
then I'd love it for you to come to me rather than have me go to you.
Right.
And that's the vision of what I think AI will bring to various applications, and that's the way I want to position eBay in the future, which is, sure, there'll be an eBay destination forever, but I want to see eBay become a commerce fabric. I want to see it live outside of the core marketplace, and we're starting to make those positions right now.
So I talk to a ton of startups in my job, and I'd say 1 out of every, I don't know, let's say 5 says, we're going to carve out a piece of eBay that they don't focus on, they've neglected. And so examples today, you'll see, there's a host of online consignment, used fashion sites. There are, in sort of the local world, there is the idea of local commerce, taking business from Craigslist, part of that's eBay. How do you make sure that you catch one of those companies before it's too late? And those are just some examples. I mean,
Sure.
you see this every day.
First of all, it's a very competitive market because surprise is so big. It's $17 trillion market. That's commerce. And I'd love the field to be dominated by 3 big players, but it's not going to be that way. There'll be lots. With that said, it's easy to grow when you're small in commerce, and it's really hard to grow big. There are 3 companies that have gotten to scale in digital commerce. There are 3. There are lots of players that have extraordinary growth, and you add them all up, and they don't sell in a year what we sell in a day. It's with a balance sheet, you can grow in commerce. It's not hard to sell things for less than they're worth. That doesn't make a business. And by the way, there are a lot of startups in the commerce space that I don't think are businesses. It's not that they're not overvalued.
You want to name any names?
No. But I don't think they're businesses. I mean, that's a very important distinction. With an endless balance sheet, I can show you great growth. I mean, I can sell a lot of $1,000 televisions for $500. A lot of them. But that's not a business.
You're noticing some of these because you're playing in some of these spaces. So I mentioned competitors, companies trying to, disrupt Craigslist, and you have your own. And these are mobile-focused apps, taking a visual approach to local peer-to-peer commerce.
And because some of those models are very relevant. That's a classifieds model, and we run that classifieds model in 10 countries around the world very profitably. The U.S., I think the classifieds market is up for grabs. And there are a lot of good startups that have entered that space, and we've entered that space with an app called Close 5, which is now at 8 million downloads. And we know how to run a classifieds business. We know the playbook, and we want to win. I think.
So you spend them out of existence?
No, we know how to run a classified playbook. It's not all about spend. It's about how
liquidity.
You use data. It's how you get liquidity. It's how you run market by market. It's what local means. And we know how to do this. I mean,
Would there be a classified ad on Facebook or wherever I am? Would that be part of what that fabric you
If you express intent, then why not? Why not? Why not
if somehow you picked up a social signal that I was interested in a used car or something?
Why not? Why not? If you knew that exact car you wanted was for sale around the block, but you didn't know that unless we showed you that would be a good consumer experience. And that's the difference between being intrusive and being useful.
Be much better than I bought the car and the next day there's an ad.
Yeah, of course.
You want to buy the same car.
Of course, and that's about using data intelligently. That's about, whether you want to call it deep learning AI or just using data smartly, that's the essence of what e-commerce is. E-commerce is a data business. We're a data company. That's what we do.
We have time for some questions if anyone has one. We
We do have a question.
Right here.
Oh, right over here.
Hey, Devin, Mark Mahaney.
Hi, Mark.
I wanted to ask you about your ability to use data to go out and, I know you're using data to help people who have come to the site better curate the site and find what they want, but you've got so many unique items on the site. I'm sure everybody here would have 3 or 5 or 10 things they would find really interesting on eBay. They just don't know it.
Yeah.
And so is there a way to use data to actually go out and use smart ads or smart targeting? And think about all the people who've been on eBay in the past who haven't been back in a while, like Walt. I mean, there's got to be a way to tap into that because there's a lot of interesting stuff that people don't know is there. So you get them to come to the site in the first place.
Yeah, yes is the short answer. Thanks for the question. All of this is about relevance. It's about consumer relevance. So we regularly reach out to users that are lapsed, like any e-commerce company, and we say, hey, this is something new. It might be interesting to you. Last time you were here, Walt, you bought a sweater, and there's a killer new sweater, and it's at a better price, and it's at a better color. You know, that's what we do, and we reactivate customers all the time. But I think in this spirit of something is changing, data's getting better, and we're getting more data sources in, and our targeting is getting much better. So if we have no idea who you are, if you've never been to eBay, most people in the world have, but if you've never been to eBay, that's where we have to have a very light touch outside of, that's where, you know, we don't spam, but we can be present in digital ads and other means outside of the marketplace. But if we touched you and we know something about you, you're going to see more and more targeting about, we think this might be relevant to you. And the way we do that is we do that through CRM, through email, we do that through social networks. We do that everywhere you live in your digital life, as long as it's not intrusive.
Okay.
Another question?
Yes.
I have a question. Sorry. Devin, I have a question about StubHub. Where does that fit into the eBay family, and how does it contribute to the growth? And I mean, it's the largest secondary ticket marketplace, right?
Now in the world, after we did an acquisition last week, yeah, StubHub was an acquisition that we did probably about 10 years ago, and it's been an incredibly successful business. StubHub is the largest secondary ticket market in the US, and as of last week, now in the world. We purchased a business in Europe, and it now is taken StubHub to 47 different markets. You know, StubHub is a remarkable consumer experience. It's really incredible to be able to now with mobile literally sit in a seat at Yankee Stadium or somewhere in the world and upgrade your ticket while you're in the venue. Literally snap a better ticket, walk down, have it scanned, and walk into a better seat. I mean, that's an incredible consumer experience. StubHub is also a good example of, I've heard the mantra that it's impossible to change the trajectory of growth in an internet business. Can't be done.
Well, I told you a year ago when you first became CEO after the split that I had heard that you were the only person inside of eBay management who wanted to keep StubHub as part of eBay and thought it makes sense. So you want to tell me?
I want to take a victory lap, because when you said that,
Yeah.
When you said that, StubHub was growing at 4 or 5%, and now StubHub as a $4 billion business is growing at 35%. And that's product changes that we've made. That is a lot of the stuff that we're talking about trying to do in eBay. I'm not saying we're going to grow that fast, but I'm saying it is not impossible to change the trajectory of growth in an internet business, and we've done it. We've done it with StubHub. It is a rapidly growing, at-scale market leader and a great business.
What's the ceiling on that business as a secondary? You've done one direct ticket relationship with the Philadelphia 76ers. I haven't watched them in a couple of years because they are awful to watch, but
yes.
Is that a big part of the future? Or because I don't know how many of those deals you can actually do.
What you saw us do last week is what we'll continue to do, which is StubHub has taken a lot of share in a narrowly defined US secondary ticket market, so we're redefining the market. One is geographic, and then second is the type of ticketing experiences. So the world is way behind the United States in the secondary market. It's at early stages of development. I think there's at least another StubHub outside the US that is in the first inning of growth. And that's why we did the acquisition. And you know, so that creates a lot of runway for that business. But secondary is a term that insiders use for fans. They just want a ticket. I don't know what a secondary ticket is. I just want to go to the game. So we may push down into primary where it makes sense. We also may push down the tail. You know, today we do huge events. We do concerts, sports. but there are a ton of events in the world, and the StubHub brand is so strong that I don't see why it wouldn't
So you
have
mean
relevance.
like art exhibitions?
Sure, why not? I mean, we
whatever.
may not go all the way down the tail, but call it the torso. From the 76ers or the Yankees game to the code. This isn't an open conference, but there's some that are. And why wouldn't StubHub have relevance in that venue? And they also have great data, and they express intent through targeting very, very well.
Let's get another question.
This has to be the last one, I think.
Hi, Devin. Pam Dillon, Wine Ring. We do deep learning in sensory consumer products, namely the wine industry. Question for you on who
We
you're...
just launched a wine category last week, 2 weeks
That's going to be part of my question.
Okay.
The first part is, how would you define your target customer? How is that target customer evolving? How do you see the evolution of that going? And second of all, how does that definition sit in the context of your choice to enter the wine industry?
The way we define our customer is not demographic, it's by what we would call a shopping occasion, meaning people shop differently for different things. Our target customer, if you look at the demographic, it's everybody. It's young and it's old and it's men and it's women. It's incredibly heterogeneous. But they do the same thing on eBay. They treasure hunt and they self-express. They go to eBay because they're looking for an incredible deal, or they go to eBay because they want a unique item that they can't find somewhere else. And that's why we tend to over-index in emotional categories over functional categories. So that's our target customer. Our target customer is somebody who comes looking for something unique or comes looking for an incredible deal. It's the future Walt Mossberger. That's what it is.
Starting today.
Starting today.
Later this afternoon. I'm spending all afternoon on eBay.
It happens to be that our target customer drinks, thankfully, and there you go. And wine is, I think, one of these categories where e-commerce is progressively eaten. Category after category, people say it's not going to fall. This will be the one that won't go to e-commerce. There is no category that won't go to e-commerce. We could talk about art and others, but wine has an online business, but it's massively underpenetrated. And when you look at the inefficiency of supply and demand across a national or even a global wine market, it's extraordinary. Local purchasing economies, local monopolies, the inability to get good wine, the inability to understand what good wine is, that's our target customer. And I think it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar category, and we're just getting started. I think it's really exciting.
Are you expecting to apply that treasure hunt theory to wine? In other words, do you expect people to go to eBay and buy the kind of, wine brands that are often heavily, I'm not talking about junk wine, but sort of middle market wine that's discounted a lot that you can buy in the supermarket or the local wine store?
It's not cheap
Or
wine,
are you finding interesting different wines that you can sell at a good price?
It's wine that a CEO would drink.
Which is lowbrow, believe me. But it's really interesting. I think the way wine goes is the way the marketplace goes generally, which is at the top end, the rare and unique wines, like if you go on right now since we launched, there are multi-$1,000 bottles of Bordeaux and rare wine that are selling.
Yeah, Devin, I'm not buying those.
Well, I
so
didn't, somebody is.
Okay.
And that's the self-expressionist who is, so it's not cheap, it's unique. Those are unique items that are only on eBay. Then in the middle, for the treasure hunter, I think that middle category is going to be exposing wines that people don't know exist. Here's a great Napa Valley vineyard that you can't get. It's not in your store. You may never heard about it. Now, using content to explain that and say this is kind of like this, it may be a bit cheaper, it's an excellent choice. That's what we do, right? That's about not being a commodity logistics company. That's about being a unique item company. That's what eBay, a treasure hunting and a value-seeking company. That's going to have a big place in the world. And wine, to me, is just an expression of that.
So not the more commodity wines.
I don't think we're going to sell really cheap commodity wines.
I'm not talking about bad wines, just wines that you see commonly.
But if people want, I'm not looking down on it. I just think that there are plenty of markets, local markets. If you want a $5 wine, you can go to your grocery store and buy a $5 wine. We may not have a role to play there. I'd be happy to sell $5 wine. I don't think we play a massive role there. It's going to be in that middle market where I didn't know there was a deal, or in that unique item where I just couldn't get access.
Or you sell the $30 wine for $21
Yeah,
or whatever,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that, to me, wine is just a metaphor for that's what we do.
Well, thanks. Thank you,
Thank you,
Devin.
Devin.
And thank you. Much more to come.
For countless numbers of our alumni and others around the world to enjoy the facile manner in which they are able to create meaningful connections that result in lifelong relationships. Thank you, sir, for staying on the mission of making the world a more open place. In this time when elements of free societies and cultures are making concerted efforts to promote insularity. Thank you also for collaborating with your life partner and fellow alumna, the brilliant and talented Dr. Priscilla Chan. A member of the great Harvard College class of 2007, to create the Chan-Zuckerberg Initiative and sign the Giving Pledge that will provide substantially all of your vast resources to very important initiatives in the fields of technology, life sciences, and education, and as well as the promotion of equality for the benefit of the politically and economically disenfranchised. And I would be remiss on this special occasion if I did not say thank you for using your T-shirt wardrobe to demonstrate to the world that male sartorial elegance doesn't always present itself in a suit, tie, and cufflinks. Most importantly, thank you for being with us today on our special day. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my high honor to introduce Dr. Mark Zuckerberg.
I love this place. Thank you all for coming out in the rain, the pouring rain. We're going to make this worth it for you. President Faust, Board of Overseers, faculty, friends, alumni, proud parents, members of the ad board, and graduates of the greatest university in the world, I am honored to be here with you today because, let's face it, you accomplished something I never could. If I get through this speech today, it'll be the first time I actually finish something here at Harvard. Class of 2017, congratulations. Now, I'm an unlikely speaker today. Not just because I dropped out, but because we're technically in the same generation. We walked this yard less than a decade apart. We studied the same ideas and slept through the same Act 10 lectures. We may have taken different roads to get here, especially if you came all the way from the Quad. But today, I want to share what I've learned about our generation and the world we're all building together. But first, these last couple of days have brought back a lot of good memories. How many of you remember exactly where you were and what you were doing when you got that email telling you got into Harvard? I was playing the video game Civilization, and I ran downstairs and got my dad, and for some reason, his first reaction was to video me opening the email. That could have been a really, really sad video. But I swear, getting into Harvard is the thing my parents are most proud of me for. My mom is nodding. You all know what I'm talking about. Look, guys, it's tough to beat this. You'll see when you get out there. How many of you remember your first lecture here at Harvard? Mine was Computer Science 121 with the incredible Harry Lewis. Harry. I was running late for class, so I threw on a t-shirt, and I didn't realize until afterwards that I put it on inside out and backwards, and my tag was sticking out the front. I couldn't figure out why no one in class would talk to me. Except for this one guy, KX Jin. He just went with it. We started doing our problem sets together, and now he runs a big part of Facebook. And that, class of 2017, is why you should be nice to people. But my best memory from Harvard is meeting Priscilla. I had just launched this prank website, Face Mash, and the ad board wanted to see me. Everyone thought I was going to get kicked out. My parents drove up here to help me pack my stuff. My friends threw me a going away party. Who does that? As luck would have it, Priscilla was at that party with her friends, and we met in line for the bathroom in the Foho Bell Tower, and in what must be one of the all-time most romantic lines, I turned to her and said, "I'm getting kicked out in 3 days, so we need to go on a date quickly." Actually, any of you graduating today can use that line. "I'm getting kicked out today. We need to go on a date fast." I didn't end up getting kicked out. I did that to myself. Priscilla and I started dating, and, you know, that movie made it seem like Face Mash was so important to starting Facebook. It wasn't. But without Face Mash, I never would have met Priscilla. And Priscilla's the most important person in my life. So you could still say it was the most important thing I built in my time here. We have all started lifelong friendships here, and some of us even families. That's why I'm so grateful to this place. Thanks, Harvard. Today, I want to talk about purpose. But I'm not here to give you the standard commencement about finding your purpose. We're millennials. We try to do that instinctively. Instead, I'm here to tell you that finding your purpose isn't enough. The challenge for our generation is to create a world where everyone has a sense of purpose. One of my favorite stories is when JFK went to go visit the NASA Space Center, and he saw a janitor holding a broom, and he asked him what he was doing, and the janitor replied, "Mr. President, I'm helping put a man on the moon." Purpose is that feeling that you are a part of something bigger than yourself, that you are needed, and that you have something better ahead to work for. Purpose is what creates true happiness. And you are graduating at a time when this is especially important. When our parents graduated, that sense of purpose reliably came from your job, your church, your community. But today, technology and automation are eliminating many jobs. Membership in a lot of communities has been declining, and a lot of people are feeling disconnected and depressed and are trying to fill a void in their lives. As I've traveled around, I've sat with children in juvenile detention and opioid addicts who've told me that maybe their lives would have turned out differently if they just had something to do, an after-school program or somewhere to go. I've met factory workers who know their old jobs aren't coming back and are just trying to find their path ahead. For our society to keep moving forward, we have a generational challenge to not only create new jobs, but create a renewed sense of purpose. I remember that night I launched Facebook from that little dorm in Kirkland House. I went to Noakes with my friend KX, and I remember telling him clearly that I was excited to help connect the Harvard community, but one day someone would connect the whole world. The thing is, it never even occurred to me that that someone might be us. We were just college kids. We didn't know anything about that. There were all these great big technology companies with all these resources, and I just assumed one of them would do it. But this idea was so clear to us that all people want to connect. So we just kept working on it, day after day after day. And I know that a lot of you are going to have your own stories just like this. A change in the world that seems so clear that you are sure someone else is going to do it. But they're not. You will. But it's not enough to have that purpose yourself. You also have to create a sense of purpose for others. And I found that out the hard way. You see, my hope was never to build a company. I wanted to have an impact. And as all these people started joining us, I just assumed that that's what they wanted to do too. So I never took the time to explain what it was that I hoped we'd build. A couple years in, some big companies wanted to buy us. I didn't want to sell. I wanted to see if we could connect more people. And we were building the first version of Newsfeed at the time, and I thought, if we could just launch this, it could change how we all learn about the world. Nearly everyone else wanted to sell. Without a sense of higher purpose, this was their startup dream come true, and it tore our company apart. After one particularly tense argument, one of my close advisors told me if I didn't agree to sell the company right now, I would regret that decision for the rest of my life. Relationships were so frayed that within a year or so, every single person on our management team was gone. That was my hardest time leading Facebook. I believed in what we were doing, but I felt alone. And worse, it was my fault. I wondered if I was just wrong, an imposter, a 22-year-old kid who had no idea how things actually worked. Now, years later, I understand that is how things work when there's no sense of higher purpose. So it's up to all of us to create it so we can all keep moving forward together. And today, I want to talk about 3 ways that we can create a world where everyone has a sense of purpose. By taking on big, meaningful projects together. By redefining equality so everyone has the freedom to pursue their purpose. And by building community all across the world. So first, let's take on big, meaningful projects. Our generation is going to have to deal with tens of millions of jobs replaced by automation like self-driving cars and trucks. But we have the potential to do so much more than that. Every generation has its defining works. More than 300,000 people worked to put that man on the moon, including that janitor. Millions of volunteers immunized children around the world against polio, and millions of more people built the Hoover Dam and other great projects. And now it's our generation's turn to do great things. Now I know, maybe you're thinking, I don't know how to build a dam. I don't know how to get 1 million people involved in anything. Well, let me tell you a secret. No one does when they begin. Ideas don't come out fully formed. They only become clear as you work on them. You just have to get started. If I had to know everything about connecting people before I got started, I never would have built Facebook. Movies and pop culture just get this all wrong. The idea of a single eureka moment is a dangerous lie. It makes us feel inadequate because we feel like we haven't had ours yet. And it prevents people with seeds of good ideas from ever getting started in the first place. Oh, and you know what else movies get wrong about innovation? No one writes math formulas on glass, okay? All right? That's not a thing, okay? It's really good to be idealistic, but be prepared to be misunderstood. Anyone working on a big vision is going to get called crazy, even if you end up right. Anyone taking on a complex problem is going to get blamed for not fully understanding it, even though it's impossible to know everything up front. Anyone taking initiative will always get criticized for moving too fast because there's always someone who wants to slow you down. In our society, we often don't take on big things because we're so afraid of making mistakes that we ignore all the things wrong today if we do nothing. The reality is, anything we do today is going to have some issues in the future. But that can't stop us from getting started. So what are we waiting for? It is time for our generation-defining great works. How about stopping climate change before we destroy the planet and getting millions of people involved manufacturing and installing solar panels? How about curing all diseases and getting people involved by asking volunteers to share their health data, track their health data, and share their genomes? You know, today, our society spends more than 50 times as much treating people who are sick as we invest in finding cures so people don't get sick in the first place. It makes no sense. We can fix this. How about modernizing democracy so everyone can vote online? And how about personalizing education so everyone can learn? These achievements are all within our reach. Let's do them all in a way that gives everyone in our society a role. Let's do big things, not just to create progress, but to create purpose. So taking on big, meaningful projects together is the first thing we can do to create a world where everyone has a sense of purpose. The second is redefining our idea of equality so everyone has the freedom to pursue their purpose. Now, many of our parents had stable jobs throughout their careers, but in our generation, we're all a little entrepreneurial, whether we're starting our own projects or finding our role in another one. And, you know, that's great, because our culture of entrepreneurship is how we create so much progress. An entrepreneurial culture thrives when it is easy to try lots of new ideas. Facebook wasn't the first thing I built. I also built chat systems and games, study tools and music players, and I'm not alone. J.K. Rowling got rejected 12 times before she finally wrote and published Harry Potter. Even Beyoncé had to make hundreds of songs to get Halo. The greatest successes come from having the freedom to fail. Now, today, we have a level of wealth inequality that hurts everyone. When you don't have the freedom to take your idea and turn it into a historic enterprise, we all lose. And right now, today, our society is way over-indexed on rewarding people when they're successful, and we don't do nearly enough to make sure that everyone can take lots of different shots. Now, let's face it. There is something wrong with our system when I can leave here and make billions of dollars in 10 years while millions of students can't even afford to pay off their loans, let alone start a business. Look, I know a lot of entrepreneurs, and I don't know a single person who gave up on starting a business because they were worried they might not make enough money. But I know too many people who haven't had the chance to pursue their dreams because they didn't have a cushion to fall back on if they failed. We all know you don't get successful just by having a good idea or working hard. You get successful by being lucky too. If I had to support my family growing up instead of having the time to learn how to code, if I didn't know that I was going to be fine if Facebook didn't work out, then I wouldn't be standing up here today. And if we're honest, we all know how much luck we've had to get to this point in our lives. every generation expands its definition of equality. Previous generations fought for the vote and civil rights. They had the New Deal and Great Society. And now it's time for our generation to define a new social contract. We should have a society that measures progress not just by economic metrics like GDP, but by how many of us have a role we find meaningful. We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas. We're all going to change jobs and roles many times, so we need affordable childcare to get to work and healthcare that's not tied to just one employer. And we're all going to make mistakes. So we need a society that's less focused on locking us up and stigmatizing us when we do. And as our technology keeps on evolving, we need a society that is more focused on providing continuous education through our lives. And yes, giving everyone the freedom to pursue purpose isn't going to be free. People like me should pay for it. And a lot of you are going to do really well, and you should too. That is why Priscilla and I started the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative and committed our wealth to promoting equal opportunity. These are the values of our whole generation. It was never a question of if we were going to do this. The only question was when. Millennials are already one of the most charitable generations in history. In just 1 year, more than 3 in 4 US millennials donated to charity, and more than 7 in 10 raised money for another one. But it's not just about giving money. You can also give time. And I promise you, if you just take an hour or two a week, that's all it takes to give someone a hand and help them reach their potential. Now, maybe you're thinking, that's a lot of time. I'm not sure if I have that much time. I used to think that. You know, when Priscilla graduated from Harvard, she became a teacher. And before she'd do education work with me, she told me that I needed to get my own experience teaching a class. At first, I complained. I said, you know, I'm kind of busy. I'm running this company. But she insisted. So I taught an after-school program at the local Boys and Girls Club on entrepreneurship. I taught those kids lessons on product development and marketing, and they taught me what it was like growing up feeling targeted for your race, and what it's like having a family member in prison. I shared stories of my time in school, and they shared their hope that one day they would get to go to college too. For 5 years, I've had dinner with those students every month. One of them even threw Priscilla and me our first baby shower. And next year, they're going to college. Every one of them, first generation in their families. We can all make time to give someone a hand. Let's give everyone the freedom to pursue purpose, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because when more people can turn their dreams into something great, we are all better for it. Purpose doesn't only come from work. The third way we can create a sense of purpose for everyone is by building community. And in our generation, when we say purpose for everyone, we mean everyone in the world. Now, quick show of hands. How many of you here are from another country? All right, now keep your hands up. How many of you are friends with one of these folks? Now we're talking. See, we have grown up connected. In a recent survey of millennials around the world, asking what most defines our identity, the most popular answer wasn't nationality, ethnicity, or religion. It was citizen of the world. That's a big deal. Every generation expands the circle of people we consider one of us. And in our generation, that now includes the whole world. We understand that the great arc of human history bends towards people coming together in ever greater numbers, from tribes to cities to nations, to achieve things that we could not on our own. We get that our greatest opportunities are now global. We can be the generation that ends poverty, that ends disease. And we get that our greatest challenges need global responses too. No country can fight climate change alone or prevent pandemics. Progress now requires coming together, not just as cities or nations, but also as a global community. But we live in an unstable time. There are people left behind by globalization across the whole world. And it's tough to care about people in other places when we don't first feel good about our lives here at home. There's pressure to turn inwards. This is the struggle of our time. The forces of freedom, openness, and global community against the forces of authoritarianism, isolationism, and nationalism. Forces for the flow of knowledge, trade, and immigration against those who would slow them down. This is not a battle of nations. It is a battle of ideas. There are people in every country for more global connection, and there are good people against it. And this isn't going to be decided at the UN either. It's going to happen at the local level when enough of us feel a sense of purpose and stability in our own lives that we can start to open up and care about everyone else too. And the best way to do that is to start building local communities right now. We all get a lot of meaning from our communities. Who here's from Elliott House? How about Lowell? I know you guys found community because you literally live right on top of each other. And Mather? I'll just leave that there. Whether our communities are houses or sports teams, churches or a cappella groups, they give us that sense that we are a part of something bigger, that we are not alone. They give us the strength to expand our horizons. And that's why it's so striking that over the past few decades, membership in all kinds of communities has declined by as much as 1/4. That's a lot of people who now need to find a sense of purpose somewhere else. But I know that we can rebuild these communities and start new ones because many of you already are. I met Agnes Segoye, who's graduating today. Agnes, where are you? Agnes spent her childhood navigating conflict zones with human trafficking in Uganda, and now she's trained thousands of law enforcement officials to keep communities safe. I met Kayla Oakley and Neha Jain, who are graduating today too. Stand up, guys. Kayla and Neha started a nonprofit that connects people suffering from chronic illnesses with people in their communities who are willing to help out. And I met David Razu Aznar, who's graduating from the Kennedy School today. David, stand up. David is a former city councilor who fought to make Mexico City the first Latin American city to pass marriage equality, even before San Francisco. And this is my story too. A student in a dorm, connecting one community at a time, and keeping at it until one day we can connect the whole world. Change starts local. Even global change starts small with people like us. In our generation, the struggle of whether we connect more, whether we achieve our greatest opportunities, comes down to this: your ability to build communities and create a world where every single person has a sense of purpose. Class of 2017, you are graduating into a world that needs purpose. And it's up to you to create it. Now, maybe you're asking yourself, can I really do this? Well, remember when I told you about that class I taught at the Boys and Girls Club? One day after class, I was talking to my students about going to college, and one of my top students raised his hand and said that he wasn't sure he could go to college because he's undocumented. He wasn't sure if they'd take him. Last year, I took him out to breakfast for his birthday, and I wanted to get him a gift, so I asked him what he wanted, and he just started talking about struggles that he saw other students in his class facing, and finally said, you know, I'd really just like a book on social justice. I was blown away. Here is a young guy who has every reason to be cynical. He wasn't sure if the country he calls home, the only one he's known, was going to deny him his dream of going to college. But he wasn't feeling sorry for himself. He wasn't even thinking of himself. He has a greater sense of purpose, and he's going to bring people along with him. It says something about our situation today that I can't even say his name because I don't want to put him at risk. But if a high school senior who doesn't know what the future holds for him can do his part to move the world forward, then we owe it to the world to do our part too. So before you walk out those gates one last time, and as we sit here in front of Memorial Church, I'm reminded of a prayer, Misha Berach, that I say whenever I face a big challenge, that I sing to my daughter, thinking of her future when I tuck her in at night. And it goes, may the source of strength, who's blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. I hope you find the courage to make your life a blessing. Congratulations, class of 2017. Good luck out there. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mark.
And the first thing to really talk about is I want to take you back to the beginning. And in 1995, you started.
Yep.
You went public in 97. And I'll adjust for stock splits, but you raised stock. You issued shares at $1.50 a share.
That's right.
In 1988, your revenue was $600 million, and you lost $125 million, but your stock had gone to $55 a share. So you doubled down. Sales went up threefold. You lost another $400 million, but your stock went up to $76. $27 billion of market cap. Your personal net worth of $9 billion. Take us back to that time where the market is telling you you're doing great, but you have red ink in the company. You took on $2 billion of debt from 99 to 01 while you doubled sales yet again. What were you thinking back then?
Well, that's a great question, and it is kind of fun to go back and think about those days. In those days when we had, when I started the company and it was just one person, and then there were 10 people, and today there are almost 600,000 people. So there's a lot of change. But back in that time, we were still a pretty small company by most standards, but we were growing fast, and it was very exciting. When I started, I was driving all the packages to the post office myself. I knew the UPS guy so well that he would let me in even like 5 minutes after closing. So it was, I hoped one day we'd be able to afford a forklift. It was that kind of operation. We were so inefficient with our operations and logistics in those early days when there were just 10 of us that I didn't have packing tables. We were packing on the floor on our hands and knees. And I said to one of the software engineers who was packing alongside me, you know what we should do? We should get knee pads. And he looked at me like I was the dumbest guy he'd ever seen in his life. And he said, Jeff, we should get packing tables. And next day I got packing tables, and it doubled our productivity. And so, but in the era you're talking about, we had gone public, and you're right, on a split-adjusted basis, it's $1.50 a share in today's terms. And the market became very quickly a kind of an internet bubble kind of market, and the stock prices went up very, very high. When I raised the initial funding for Amazon, I had to talk to 60 prospective investors to raise $1 million, and I raised $1 million from 22 different investors, $50,000 at a time, and they got 20% of the company for $1 million, and that was in '95. But just 2 or 3 years later, Stanford MBA with no business experience could raise $25 million with a single phone call if they had a internet business plan. So the whole thing in just 2 or 3 years, the excitement really, as we would shortly see when the bubble burst in the year 2000, the hyperbolic excitement about the internet had infected everybody. And I knew that we had I liked our business, and I liked the fundamentals of our business, but I also knew that the stock price was disconnected from what we were doing on a day-to-day basis. And so I was always preaching. We would have all hands meetings, and it was a small number of employees at that time, but probably, let's see, in '97, I think we would have had a few hundred employees. We would have all hands meetings, and I would say, look, we got to remember the great quote from Benjamin Graham that in the short run, the stock market is a voting machine. In the long run, it's a weighing machine. So don't think about the daily stock price, because it was going up every day. The stock price was going up. And I didn't want, because all the employees had stock options, and I didn't want them counting their success that way. And so I would say, look, when the stock is up 30% in a month, don't feel 30% smarter. Because when it's down 30% in a month, then you're going to have to feel 30% dumber. And it's not going to feel as good.
Right.
And it was good that I kind of laid that groundwork because, sure enough, in the year 2000, the whole thing came tumbling down. I think Amazon
Went back
stock
to about $6.
went down to $6, and that I don't even know if that's on a split adjusted basis.
Yeah.
I think that's probably that was on a split adjusted basis probably below $1.
So, and did
Yeah.
you ever doubt the business model at that point?
No. So it's very interesting to me because I had all the internal metrics on, how many customers we had and what was going on, and I could see people thought we were losing money because we were selling dollar bills for 90 cents, even though we were very clear that we were not. We had high fixed costs, but we had contribution margin, positive contribution margin. And I just knew that it was a fixed cost business, and as soon as we reached a sufficient scale, we would have a very good business. And so that understanding of the fixed nature of our expenses relative to physical world retail is what led us to have the get big fast strategy. We knew that it would be that our economics would be very much improved if we could have a sufficient scale. So we worked hard on that.
And so at that time, you're preaching the benefits of e-commerce and really disintermediating the business. So fast forward to today, now we have content, we have physical Amazon stores, we have Amazon cashierless stores, which we used to call shoplifting, and then now
it's shoplifting without the jail time.
That's right, and then buying Whole Foods here from a Texas company. So how does that fit together, your vision, and then how do you manage these disparate businesses with different cost structures now?
Yeah, well, and by the way, just finishing up a little on that prior point before I answer that question, and also with the memory of Barbara Bush in all of our minds, I think part of, a lot of people in this room are entrepreneurs, started their own businesses, done various things, taken risks of various kinds, and I think one of the precursors, one of the foundational things to being able to take risk is to have had some kind of support from somebody. You have to have some mentors. You have to have somebody who loves you. These are the kind of things that build up and allow you to kind of, jump off into uncharted terrain and do something new because you have a support system of one kind or another. And I certainly did. So for me, I just want to point out that I feel very strongly that I've won a lot of lotteries. Amazon is one of the lotteries that I've won, but I had a big lottery with my parents. My dad is a Cuban immigrant. He came here when he was 16 years old, didn't speak any English. He's a great guy. And my mother had me when she was 17 years old. So she was a pregnant 16-year-old in Albuquerque, New Mexico in high school, which was not cool. And she made it work, and her parents, my grandparents, helped her with that whole thing and made that all work. And if you don't get that kind of support somehow, it doesn't have to be your parents. Sometimes people get lucky, it's a grandparent or it's a friend or a family friend or a teacher. It can be somebody, but you need that. Somebody has to step into your life, and that's a lottery that I suspect a lot of people in this room have also won, just like me.
So the question
Amazon Go, and all that. We do so many different things. So this is the question I sometimes get. How can you do so many different things? Why don't you stick to the knitting? The kind of traditional advice would be to stay focused and keep the business simple. And the way I think about this is we actually do stick to one thing. It's just not described. It's not the business itself. We do web services, which is big enterprises buying compute services from us, and we have our retail business, and we have Amazon Studios, which is making original content, and Amazon Go, the things you listed. So, but the cultural thread that runs through all these things is the same. We only have a few principles at Amazon, kind of core values that we go back to over and over again. And if you looked at each of the things that we do, you would see those run straight through everything. So the first one, and by far the most important one, is customer obsession. And we talk about it as customer obsession as opposed to competitor obsession. And I have seen over and over again companies talk about that they're customer focused, but really when I pay close attention to them, I believe they are competitor focused. And that's just a completely different mentality. By the way, competitor focus can work, but I don't think it works in the long run as well as customer focused. For one thing, once you're the leader, if your whole culture is competitor obsessed, it's kind of hard to stay energized and motivated if you're out in front. Whereas customers are always unsatisfied, they're always discontent, they always want more. And so no matter how far you get out there in front of your competitors, you're still behind your customers. So they're always pulling you along. So customer obsession is a deep principle that underlies everything we do. Another one is eagerness to invent. So we love to pioneer. And when we have done, by the way, whenever we have tried to do something in a kind of Me Too fashion, we have failed at it. We need to have something that is differentiated, unique, something that customers are going to like, that we're kind of leading with. So that's another element that works for us. And then another one is long-term thinking. We are willing to take some time and be patient with our business initiatives, and that runs through everything. So a lot of our competitors might have 2 to 3 year kind of time frames, and we might have more of a 5 to 7 year sort of time frame. And then the last one, operational excellence. So literally, how do you have high standards around, identifying defects, fixing defects at the root, all of those kinds of things that lead to what I think also can be in a simpler way just stated as professionalism, that you want to do things right just for the sake of doing them right.
So let's talk about that with another, I guess this is a corollary. Now that you have about 600,000 employees, I calculated you're adding about 250 people a day. You've mentioned that you're trying to fend off day two.
Yeah.
And you've said that day two is stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciatingly painful decline, followed by death. That is why it is always day one.
Yeah.
How's that work?
Well, so day one, this is a phrase that we use at Amazon all the time. I've been using it in my first annual shareholder letter from 20 years ago. And we say it's always day one. And it needs to be day one for the reason that you just mentioned. And so the real question for me is, how do you go about maintaining a day one culture? It's great to have the scale of Amazon. We have financial resources, we have lots of brilliant people, we can accomplish great things, we have global scope, we have operations all over the world. But the downside of that is that you can lose your nimbleness, you can lose your entrepreneurial spirit, you can lose that kind of heart that small companies often have. And so if you could have the best of both worlds, if you can have that entrepreneurial spirit and heart, while at the same time having all the advantages that come with scale and scope, think of the things that you could do. And so the question is, how do you achieve that? The scale is good because it makes you robust. A big boxer can take a punch to the head. The question is, you also want to dodge those punches. So you'd like to be nimble. You want to be big and nimble. And I find that there are a lot of things that are protective of the day one mentality. I already spent some time on one of them, which is customer obsession. I think that's the most important thing. If you can, and it gets harder as you get bigger. When you're a little tiny company, say you're a 10-person startup company, every single person in the company is focused on the customer. When you get to be a bigger company, you've got middle managers, and you've got all these layers, and those people aren't on the front lines. They're not interacting with customers every day. They're insulated from customers, and they start to manage not the customer happiness directly, but they start to manage through proxies like metrics and processes, and some of those things can become bureaucratic. So it's very challenging. But one of the things that happens is the decision-making velocity slows down. And I think one of the reasons that happens is that people, all say junior executives inside the big company, start to model all decisions as if they are heavyweight, irreversible, highly consequential decisions. And so even two-way doors, you make a decision, it's the wrong decision, you can just back through the door and try again. Even those reversible decisions start to be made with heavyweight processes. And so you can teach people that these pitfalls and traps, and then teach them to avoid those traps. And that's what we're trying to do at Amazon, so that we can maintain our inventiveness and our heart and our kind of small company spirit, even as we have the scale and scope of a larger company.
So 600,000 people, small company, which that's a trick. So I know the Bush Center, we focus on leadership. And I know that you're also a voracious reader. And you're fond of a book by Nassim Taleb called The Black Swan.
Yeah, sure.
And it's about human tendencies to reduce things to anecdotal stories. And to shield us from sort of the randomness of the way things actually happen.
Building narratives.
Yeah.
And
how
we humans
build
can
that?
create a narrative around anything. To connect any sequence of facts, we can create a narrative.
So how do you infect that throughout the whole organization when you have that many layers?
Well, I think that, what I would say about that, and it's really a little different from the way that Black Swan talks about anecdotes, the way you're talking about, but I'm actually a big fan of anecdotes in business, not building a narrative structure around them necessarily, but I still have an email address that customers can write to. I see most of those emails, and I don't answer very many of them anymore, but I see them, and I forward them, some of them, the ones that catch my curiosity, I forward them to the executives in charge of that area with a question mark. And that question mark is just a shorthand for, can you look into this? Why is this happening? What's going on? And what I find is very interesting because we have tons of metrics. We have, weekly business reviews with these metric decks, and we know so many things about customers and their whether we're delivering on time, whether the packages have too much air in them and wasteful of packaging and so on. We have so many metrics that we monitor, and the thing I have noticed is that when the anecdotes and the data disagree, the anecdotes are usually right. There's something wrong with the way you're measuring it, and that's why it's so important to keep you need to run something where you're doing, shipping billions of packages a year. For sure, you need good data and metrics. Are you delivering on time? Are you delivering on time in every city? Are you delivering on time to apartment complexes? Are you delivering on time in certain countries? You do need the data, but then you need to check that data with your intuition and your instincts, and you need to teach that to all the senior executives and junior executives too.
So if you're not answering your emails, can you give us your cell phone, maybe a text as Sorry.
Oh my God.
Still have the 2 pizza rule and no PowerPoints?
Oh yeah, the 2 pizza team. We try to create teams that are no larger than can be fed with 2 pizzas. We call that the 2 pizza team rule. No PowerPoints are used inside of Amazon. So every meeting, when we hire a new executive from the outside, this is the weirdest meeting culture you will ever encounter. And new executives have a little bit of, culture shock in their first Amazon meeting, because what we do is somebody for the meeting has prepared a 6-page memo, a narratively structured memo that is got, real sentences and topic sentences and verbs and nouns, not just bullet points. And it lays out and supposed to create the context for what will then be a good discussion. So, and then we read those memos silently in the meeting. So it's like a study hall. And we do that, everybody sits around the table, and we read silently for usually about half an hour, however long it takes us to read the document. And then we discuss it. And it's so much better than the typical PowerPoint presentation for so many reasons. I could talk about this for all of our time.
Nobody's eating the pizza at that point because they're sitting around.
No pizza usually at that point.
One author said that takes you back to River Oaks Elementary School in Houston, where they started with a silent reading exercise.
I never made that connection, but you never know where things come from. I did have a great experience there. Yeah. So, but I definitely recommend the memo over the PowerPoint. And the reason we read them in the room, by the way, is because just like, high school kids, executives will bluff their way through the meeting as if they've read the memo. Because we're busy And so you got to actually carve out the time for the memo to get read, and that's what the first half hour of the meeting is for. And then everybody's actually read the memo. They're not just pretending to have read the memo.
That's pretty effective. How has your leadership style changed over the years?
It's changed a lot, mostly just because it's had to. You know, the company has changed so much, and I can't, you know, when the company is 10 people or 100 people, I can be involved in every decision, not just, you know, not just the objectives, like what are we going to do, but even the methods, how are we going to do it? And as the company gets bigger, you know, the CEO or the founder or whoever it is leading the company cannot be involved in all of those decisions. They certainly cannot be involved in the methods of how things are going to get done. So you do have to change your leadership approach as the company scales. But the principles of the company have not changed. In fact, I probably spend more of my time now on culture and trying to set high standards for things like customer obsession and inventiveness and things like that. So for me, I'm kind of a teacher now, so it's changed quite a bit, and I have this great luxury. I love my job. I tap dance into work. I just got back from an amazing vacation in Norway. I got to go dog sledding and go to a wolf preserve and all this really cool stuff. But I couldn't wait to get back to work because it's so fun. And one of the reasons it's fun for me is I get to work in the future. So my job, I have very limited kind of day-to-day operational needs. You know, I've constructed my job so that I don't have to be pulled into the present. I can stay 2 or 3 years in the future. And actually, I'm always advising my senior team, the people who report to me, that they should organize themselves in the same way. We're big enough now that they need to be able to look around corners. They can't be, if something pulls me into the present, it's because something has gone wrong. You know, and we need to, you know, kind of figure it's a firefighting exercise, and that's not how you should be running a business of this scale. So it's changed a lot.
Okay, so following up with that, you were quoted as saying, "I believe you have to be willing to be misunderstood if you're going to innovate." So how are you misunderstood?
If you're going to do anything new or innovative, you have to be willing to be misunderstood. And if you can't tolerate that, then for God's sake, don't do anything new or innovative. Every important thing we've done has been misunderstood, often by well-meaning, sincere critics, sometimes, of course, by self-interested, insincere critics. But you know, I'll give you an example. 1,000 years ago, we started this thing called customer reviews, and we let customers review books. We only sold books at that time, and customers could come in and rate a book between 1 and 5 stars, and they could write a text-based review. You guys are very familiar with this. It's now a very normal thing. But back then, this was crazy, and the publishers, the book publishers, did not like this because, of course, not all the reviews are positive. And I got a letter from one publisher that said, "I have a good idea for you. Why don't you just publish the positive customer reviews?" And I thought about this, and the argument he was making to me is that our sales would go up if we just published the positive customer reviews. And I thought about this, and I thought, I don't actually believe that, because I don't think we make money when we sell something. We make money when we help someone make a purchase decision. And it's just a slightly different way of looking at it, because part of what they're paying us for is helping them make a purchase decision. And if you think about it that way, then you want the negative reviews too. And of course, it has been extremely helpful for people to have negative customer reviews. And by the way, it's come full circle now, where the product manufacturers use the customer reviews to improve the next generation of the product. So it's actually helping the whole ecosystem. And now nobody criticizes customer reviews. And in fact, if you were to, here in the year 2018, if some e-commerce company were to say, we're only going to publish the positive customer reviews, that would be the crazy thing that would get criticized. So the new and innovative quickly becomes the new normal, and then it's the new incumbent idea, and then it doesn't get criticized. By the way, more generally, and what I preach at Amazon to all of our employees is when we are criticized, there's a simple process that you need to go through, which is first you look yourself in the mirror and decide, is your critic right? Do you agree? Are we doing something wrong? If you are, change. And by the way, if you look yourself in the mirror and you decide that your critic is wrong, as we did with the customer reviews, then do not change, no matter how much pressure is brought to bear. Do the right thing in that case as well. Have a deep keel. You have to have a deep keel.
Good. So why don't we shift to personal, away from Amazon a little bit. If you could write your legacy, what would you want your legacy to read?
World's oldest man. I stole that. That's not original. But I would love it. Let's work on that. I keep telling my biotech friends, hurry. What the hell, guys? Come on. I don't know. I'm probably, if you think long term, and I can talk about this at great length, but long term, if you take a really long run view, many decades, maybe even a couple of hundred years, I think the most important work that I'm doing, and I get increasing conviction on this with every passing year, is the work I'm doing at Blue Origin on space travel.
Okay. Well, why don't we talk about that?
Okay.
Because I think from a vision standpoint, I think people should appreciate the horizon that you have. So let's talk about your I'll call it your near-term objectives. Well, let's say 75 years, and then your long-term objectives 100 to 300 years from now.
Well, so first of all, you don't choose your passions choose you. And all of us are gifted with certain passions, and the people who are lucky are the ones who get to follow those things. And I always advise our young employees, I meet with interns and so on, you can have, and my kids too, you can have a job, or you can have a career, or you can have a calling. And if you can somehow figure out how to have a calling, you have hit the jackpot, because that's the big deal. And most people don't ever get there. You're very lucky if you have a career. A lot of people end up with a job. And so, for me, I have been interested in rockets, space travel, propulsion since I was a 5-year-old boy. And I have spent a tremendous amount of time thinking about it. So it's not like I really have a choice to follow this passion. It has captured me. But I think it's very important that we go out into space as a civilization. And the reason is not the one that I think is very common. There are many reasons that are given. One of the reasons that is out there, and it's a very old idea, one of the people who first articulated it very well was Arthur C. Clarke. He said, all civilizations become spacefaring or extinct. And that even may be technically true in a long run, kind of long enough horizon. But that idea is it has kind of come to be that we've got all our eggs in one basket, and we need a plan B. If we had a civilization elsewhere on another planet, somewhere in the solar system, then when Earth gets destroyed, humanity will still be fine. I find this particular argument incredibly unmotivating. We have now sent robotic probes to every planet in this solar system. Believe me, this is the best one. It is not close. My friends who want to move to Mars, I say, I have an idea for you. Why don't you first, for a year, move to the top of Mount Everest, because the top of Mount Everest is a garden paradise compared to Mars. And so it's this planet is a gem. This planet is unbelievable, and as you travel around, the more you travel around, the more you see how incredible it is. And I'm not even just talking about nature. I'm talking about the civilization we built and the urban cities that we have, and all of these amazing things. And so we need to protect it. Now, and I'm not even talking about protecting it from asteroids or nuclear holocaust or anything, although all those things are probably important and valid. But we don't need to worry about that because we have something more certain that is a problem. And that is, if you take current baseline energy usage on Earth today, global energy usage, and compound that at just 3% a year, then in just a few hundred years, you're going to have to cover the entire surface of the Earth in solar cells. That's how powerful compounding is. So, and by the way, we have been growing energy usage at a few percent a year for a long time. So, our civilization has a lot of advantages because we increase our energy usage. The human body, in a state of nature, if you are just an animal in the state of nature, your body, your metabolic rate, uses about 100 watts of power. But a modern person living in a developed country, you actually use your all-in civilizational per capita metabolic rate is 11,000 watts. We use a lot of energy. That's about as much energy as a blue whale uses. And so we have, there are billions of us, and most of us aren't even really living in the kind of lifestyle of a developed country yet, but they will be very soon, and we hope they will be. We want them to. And so you're going to face a choice, and you won't face this choice, and I won't face this choice, but your grandchildren's grandchildren will face this choice. Do you want to live in a world of stasis, or do you want to have 1 trillion humans living in the solar system? Because the solar system is big. Earth is small. We capture Earth's surface is so small, it captures a tiny, tiny fraction of the solar output. So once you go out into space, you have, for practical purposes, once again, unlimited resources. And the solar system can easily support 1 trillion humans. If you had 1 trillion humans, then you'd have 1,000 Mozarts and 1,000 Einsteins and so on and so on. That would be a dynamic, incredible civilization in which you would want your grandchildren's grandchildren to live in. I think ultimately Earth becomes zoned, residential and light industrial. And, we'll have universities here and beautiful parks and houses, but we won't have big factories here. All of that will be much better done in space, where we have access to much higher quality resources. And so that's going to take that's a multi-100-year vision. And my piece of this vision is I'm taking my Amazon lottery winnings and I'm converting them into reusable rocket vehicles so that we can lower the cost of access to space. Because right now the price of admission to do interesting things in space is just too high. If I look at what Amazon was able to do 20 years ago, we didn't have to build a transportation network. It already existed. That heavy lifting was in place. We didn't have to build a payment system. That heavy lifting had already been done. It was the credit card system. We didn't have to put a computer at every desk. That had already been done too, mostly for playing games, by the way, and so on. So all the pieces of heavy lifting were already in place 20 years ago, and that's why, with $1 million, I could start this company. Today, and then there are even better examples on the internet over the last 20 years. Facebook started in a dorm room. I guarantee you 2 kids cannot build a giant space company in their dorm room. It's impossible. But I want to create the heavy lifting infrastructure, kind of do the hard part, so that the future generation, 2 kids in a dorm room, will be able to create a giant space company. So that's the goal. And then, thank you, you're not going to... you're not going to achieve the vision that I just laid out of 1 trillion humans living in space and having this dynamic world without a big industry made up of thousands of companies. But it has to start with making the vehicles much more productive. And right now, you use a rocket once and you throw it away, and that is just a very expensive way to do business.
So can I talk then about another element to get you to discuss your vision? This may not be germane to the work you're doing, but you are one of the great thinkers. Artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Pros and cons. We've heard people talk about the great benefits. We've heard about disrupting and changing and leaving us all in a jobless society. We've heard autonomous weapons are a disaster.
Yeah.
Where do you fall on your vision of where artificial intelligence is going to go, and also some of the more cautionary, and also some of the benefits?
Well, you mentioned a few things there. Each of those is worth visiting because they're different. I think autonomous weapons are extremely scary. I think it's a big, and you, by the way, do not need general AI. So right now, the things that we know how to do, you should think of those things as what is called narrow AI. Things like machine vision and so on. To build incredibly scary autonomous weapons, you do not need general AI. The techniques that we already know and understand are perfectly adequate. And these weapons, some of the ideas that people have for these weapons are in fact very scary. And so I don't know what the solution to that, but smart people need to be thinking about that, doing a lot of R&D. Is there a kind of, it'd have to be a big treaty like the Geneva Convention or something that would help regulate these weapons, because they're actually, they have a lot of issues. So that one I think is genuinely scary. The idea that there's going to be a general AI overlord that subjugates us or kills us all, I think is not something to worry about. I think that is overhyped. First of all, we don't know, we're nowhere close to knowing how to build a general AI, something that could set its own objectives. We have no idea. We don't even, it's not even a valid research area. We're so far back on that one. So I think that's a very long-term prospect that it could even happen. But second of all, I think it's unlikely that such a thing's first instincts would be to exterminate us. That would seem surprising to me.
Maybe unemploy us.
Much more likely it will help us, because we're perfectly capable of hurting ourselves. Maybe we could use some help. So I'm optimistic about that one, and certainly don't think we need to worry about it today. And then the jobless, is AI going to put everybody out of work? I am not worried about this. I find that people, all of us, I include myself, we are so unimaginative about what future jobs are going to look like and what they're going to be. If I took you back in time 100 years, when almost everyone was a farmer, and I told, we're at some big farming convention or something, and I say, in the year 2018, there is going to be a job occupation called massage therapist. They would not have believed you. And in fact, I was telling this story to a friend, and they said, Jeff, forget massage therapist, there are dog psychiatrists. And I went.
Probably find one on Amazon.
I went and looked that up on the internet. Sure enough, you can easily hire a psychiatrist for your dog. And so, there is. We humans like to do things, and we like to be productive, and we will figure out things to do, and we will use these tools to make ourselves more powerful. And in fact, what I predict is that jobs will get more engaging.
Yes.
Because you have to remember, a lot of the jobs today are quite routine. They are not necessarily anybody's, as I said before, career or calling. And so I predict that because of artificial intelligence and its ability to automate certain tasks that in the past were impossible to automate, that not only will we have a much wealthier civilization, but that the quality of work will go up very significantly, and that a higher fraction of people will have callings and careers relative to today.
So can I bring you back down to the present a little bit, and then I'd be remiss if I didn't use some of our time on your personal purchase of the Washington Post.
Yeah.
So you buy the Washington Post a few years ago. Is it going the way you thought it would go?
Much better, much faster. So the Post is profitable today. So I bought the Post in 2013. The Post was still a fantastic institution at that time, but it was in great financial difficulty. It's a fixed cost business, as almost all publishing is. And their revenues over about 6 years, from sort of 2007, 2008 to 2013, had been cut in half, from $1 billion a year to $500 million a year. And that, in a fixed cost business, puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the business. They had needed to reduce the size of the newsroom, lay off reporters, and it was very difficult. And Don Graham, whose family had owned the paper for a long period of time, he contacted me through an intermediary, actually. We'd known each other probably for almost 20 years, actually. And I was very surprised, but he said that he was interested in selling the paper. And he wanted to, I said, look, I'm not the right buyer, Don, because I don't know anything about the newspaper business. And he said, we don't need any of that. We've got lots of people who understand the newspaper business. We need somebody who understands the internet better. And this was a great act of love of Don's, because the paper had been their family for a long time, and he cared more about the paper than he cared about his ownership of it. And if any of you know him, he's an incredible gentleman, just a wonderful guy. And so over several conversations, he finally convinced me that I could help. And then I had to convince myself of a couple of things. One was, did I really believe it was an important institution? And that for me was a very quick gate to get through. I felt very powerfully that it was an important institution. I do believe that democracy dies in darkness. I think that the paper resides in Washington, D.C., the capital city of the United States of America, the most powerful country in the world, needs a paper like the Washington Post. So it was easy to decide it's an important institution. I would not have bought and tried to help turn around a financially upside down, salty snack food company. I just have better things to do. So that's why for me it was so important that it be, I might buy a really well-run, healthy salt food snack company, but that would just be an investment. And so and then the second gate I had to go through after that was, I really wanted to convince myself that it wasn't hopeless, because if it had been hopeless, also I wouldn't want to get involved. But I didn't think it was, and it has turned out to work very, very well. We did one very simple thing, really, which is we switched from, it's been a lot of work, and I don't mean to make it sound simple. The team has done an amazing amount of work. And we have a great editor in Marty Barron, and a great publisher in Fred Ryan, and a great technical leader in Shailesh. I mean, we've got a killer team at the Post. But the big kind of strategic change at the Post was flipping it from being a fantastic local, regional newspaper to being a fantastic national, global newspaper. And the reason we did that is very simple. The internet took away so many gifts from newspapers. Mostly they're kind of local ad monopolies and so on. Like, the internet just dissolved all of the gifts that newspapers had. But the one gift that it brought to the table for newspapers is almost free global distribution, because you can do it digitally. And so we refocused on that, and we had to switch from making a relatively large amount of money per reader on a relatively small number of readers to a small amount of money per reader on a much larger number of readers, and that's what we've done.
And so in our time remaining, I have a couple real quick ones.
Yeah.
Who do you emulate?
What kind of role model?
Yeah, who do you look at?
Oh, a bunch of people. I have been a Warren Buffett fan. In the business realm, I've been a Warren Buffett fan since my early 20s. I read the things he writes. So he's a very big fan. I think kind of CEOs today out there that I like, again, in the business realm. Jamie Dimon, I think if there are a couple of CEOs that I think if I were a big shareholder in JP Morgan Chase, I would just show up every Monday morning with like pastries and coffee for Jamie, and I would be like, so you happy? You good? Because I think he's a terrific executive in a very complicated company. Same thing, Bob Iger at Disney, I think is a superb executive. So probably bring him pastries. So there are a lot of role models.
Healthy pastries.
Well, yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about that. That's right. Yeah. And then outside of that, I've had lots of role models throughout my life. Yeah, some of my teachers at River Oaks Elementary School that you mentioned. I had, I had my parents, who I talked about a little earlier. I didn't talk too much about my grandfather, but he was a gigantic influence in my life. I had the great good fortune, because my mom was so young, my grandparents would take me every summer, starting at age 4, every summer, kind of to give her a break, really, for the whole summer. So I'd be with my grandparents, and on their ranch in Cotulla, Texas, which is halfway between San Antonio and Laredo. We lived in Houston, and so we would make the 5-hour drive out to Cotulla. They'd drop me off, spend a couple of days there, then they'd go back to Houston. I'd spend the summer. And I went every day to the ranch with my grandfather to help. Now, a 4-year-old boy on a ranch in South Texas is not a lot of help. But I didn't know that. I thought I was helping, and then by the time I was 16, I actually was helping. So I have, I can suture up a prolapsed cow. I can fix windmills. My grandfather was so resourceful, and that he made his own veterinary needles. He would take a little piece of wire and pound it flat with like a oxyacetylene torch, and then drill a little hole through it. And then we did all of our own veterinary work. Some of the cattle even survived. And so we had great fun out there. We built barns and welded things, and he bought a D6 Caterpillar bulldozer used. It was like 1955 model year for $5,000. It was completely broken. The gears were stripped. And then we spent, a whole summer repairing that. And the first thing we had to do to repair it was build a crane to take the gears out of the transmission. And so, what I learned from watching him was just how resourceful he was. He didn't ever call a repairman. He figured it out. And I do think that that's one of the things that, super lucky for me to grow up in that environment where you got to see resourcefulness in action. So my grandfather, giant role model for me.
Jeff, you're an American icon, and these stories really reflect how grounded you are. And starting a company from the time where you were doing it yourself to where you are today, and to maintain that touch that you have at the same time that you have this vision is really what leadership is all about. The Bush Center, we focus on developing and recognizing leadership, and that's what we're doing this week. Our time is up, and I do want to thank you. I also...
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Google I/O. It's a beautiful day, I think warmer than last year. Hope you're all enjoying it. Thank you for joining us. I think we have over 7,000 people here today, as well as many, many people. We are live streaming this to many locations around the world. So thank you all for joining us today. We have a lot to cover. But before we get started, I had one important business which I wanted to get over with. Towards the end of last year, it came to my attention that we had a major bug in one of our core products. It turns out we got the cheese wrong in our burger emoji. Anyway, we went hard to work. I never knew so many people cared about where the cheese is. We fixed it. You know, the irony of the whole thing is I'm a vegetarian in the first place. So we fixed it, but hopefully we got the cheese right. But as we were working on this came to my attention. I don't even want to tell you the explanation the team gave me as to why the foam is floating above the beer. But we restored the natural laws of physics. So all is well. We can get back to business. We can talk about all the progress since last year's I.O. I'm sure all of you would agree, it's been an extraordinary year on many fronts. I'm sure you've all felt it. We're at an important inflection point in computing, and it's exciting to be driving technology forward. And it's made us even more reflective about our responsibilities. Expectations for technology vary greatly depending on where you are in the world or what opportunities are available to you. For someone like me who grew up without a phone, I can distinctly remember how gaining access to technology can make a difference in your lives. And we see this in the work we do around the world. You see it when someone gets access to a smartphone for the first time. And you can feel it in the huge demand for digital skills we see. That's why we've been so focused on bringing digital skills to communities around the world. So far, we have trained over 25 million people, and we expect that number to rise over 60 million in the next 5 years. It's clear technology can be a positive force, but it's equally clear that we just can't be wide-eyed about the innovations technology creates. There are very real and important questions being raised about the impact of these advances and the role they'll play in our lives. So we know the path ahead needs to be navigated carefully and deliberately, and we feel a deep sense of responsibility to get this right. That's the spirit with which we are approaching our core mission to make information more useful, accessible, and beneficial to society. I've always felt that we were fortunate as a company to have a timeless mission that feels as relevant today as when we started. And we're excited about how we can approach our mission with renewed vigor thanks to the progress we see in AI. AI is enabling this for us to do this in new ways, solving problems for our users around the world. Last year at Google I/O, we announced Google AI. It's a collection of our teams and efforts to bring the benefits of AI to everyone. And we want this to work globally, so we are opening AI centers around the world. AI is going to impact many, many fields. And I want to give you a couple of examples today. Healthcare is one of the most important fields AI is going to transform. Last year, we announced our work on diabetic retinopathy, which is a leading cause of blindness, and we use deep learning to help doctors diagnose it earlier. And we've been running field trials since then at Aravind and Sankara hospitals in India, and the field trials are going really well. We are bringing expert diagnosis to places where trained doctors are scarce. It turned out, using the same retinal scans, there were things which humans quite didn't know to look for, but our AI systems offered more insights. Your same eye scan turns out holds information with which we can predict the 5-year risk of you having an adverse cardiovascular event, heart attack or strokes. So to me, the interesting thing is that more than what doctors could find in these eye scans, the machine learning systems offered newer insights. This could be the basis for a new non-invasive way to detect cardiovascular risk. And we just published the research, and we are going to be working to bring this to field trials with our partners. Another area where AI can help is to actually help doctors predict medical events. Turns out doctors have a lot of difficult decisions to make, And for them, getting advance notice, say 24 to 48 hours before a patient is likely to get very sick, has a tremendous difference in the outcome. And so we have put our machine learning systems to work. We've been working with our partners using de-identified medical records. And it turns out if you go and analyze over 100,000 data points per patient, more than any single doctor could analyze, we can actually quantitatively predict the chance of readmission 24 to 48 hours before, earlier than traditional methods. It gives doctors more time to act. We are publishing our paper on this later today, and we are looking forward to partnering with hospitals and medical institutions. Another area where AI can help is accessibility. We can make day-to-day use cases much easier for people. Let's take a common use case. You come back home in the night and you turn your TV on. It's not that uncommon to see two or more people passionately talking over each other. Imagine if you are hearing impaired and you're relying on closed captioning to understand what's going on. This is how it looks to you.
On a Danny Ainge level, but he's above the Colangelo level. In other words, he understands enough to...
As you can see, it's gibberish. You can't make sense of what's going on. So we have machine learning technology called Looking to Listen. It not only looks for audio cues, but combines it with visual cues to clearly disambiguate the two voices. Let's see how that can work, maybe in YouTube.
Not on a Danny Ainge level, but he's above the Colangelo level. In other words, he understands enough to...
You said it was all right to lose on purpose. You said it's all right to lose on purpose and advertise that to the fans. It's perfectly okay. You said it's okay. We have nothing else to talk about.
We have a lot to talk about. But you can see how we can put technology to work to make an important day-to-day use case profoundly better. The great thing about technology is it's constantly evolving. In fact, we can even apply machine learning to a 200-year-old technology, Morse code, and make an impact in someone's quality of life. It's great to reinvent products with AI. Gboard is actually a great example of it. Every single day, we offer users, and users choose over 8 billion auto corrections each and every day. Another example of one of our core products, which we are redesigning with AI, is Gmail. We just had a new, fresher look for Gmail, a recent redesign. Hope you're all enjoying using it. We are bringing another feature to Gmail. We call it Smart Compose. So as the name suggests, we use machine learning to start suggesting phrases for you as you type. All you need to do is to hit tab and keep auto-completing. In this case, it understands the subject is Taco Tuesday. It suggests chips, salsa, guacamole. It takes care of mundane things like addresses so that you don't need to worry about it. You can actually focus on what you want to type. I've been loving using it. I've been sending a lot more emails to the company, not sure what the company thinks of it. But it's been great. We are rolling out Smart Compose to all our users this month and hope you enjoy using it as well. Another product, which we built from the ground up using AI, is Google Photos. Works amazingly well and at scale. If you click on one of these photos, what we call the photo viewer experience, where you're looking at one photo at a time, so that you understand the scale, every single day, there are over 5 billion photos viewed by our users each and every day. So we want to use AI to help in those moments. So we are bringing a new feature called Suggested Actions, essentially suggesting smart actions right in context for you to act on. Say, for example, you went to a wedding and you're looking through those pictures. We understand your friend Lisa is in the picture, and we offer to share the 3 photos with Lisa, and with one click, those photos can be sent to her. So the anxiety where everyone is trying to get the picture on their phone, I think we can make that better. Say, for example, if the photo in the same wedding, if the photos are underexposed, our AI systems offer a suggestion to fix the brightness right there, one tap, and we can fix the brightness for you. Or if you took a picture of a document which you want to save for later, we can recognize, convert the document to PDF, and make it much easier for you to use later. We want to make all these simple cases delightful. By the way, AI can also deliver unexpected moments. So for example, if you have this cute picture of your kid, we can make it better. We can drop the background color, pop the color, and make the kid even cuter. Or if you happen to have a very special memory, something in black and white, maybe of your mother and grandmother, we can recreate that moment in color and make that moment even more real and special. All these features are going to be rolling out to Google Photos users in the next couple of months. The reason we are able to do this is because for a while, we've been investing in the scale of our computational architecture. This is why last year we talked about our tensor processing units. These are special purpose machine learning chips. These are driving all the product improvements you're seeing today, and we have made it available to our cloud customers. Since the last year, we've been hard at work, and today I'm excited to announce our next generation TPU 3.0. These chips are so powerful that for the first time, we've had to introduce liquid cooling in our data centers. And we put these chips in the form of giant pods. Each of these pods is now 8x more powerful than last year. It's well over 100 petaflops. And this is what allows us to develop better models, larger models, more accurate models, and helps us tackle even bigger problems. And one of the biggest problems we are tackling with AI is the Google Assistant. Our vision for the perfect assistant is that it's naturally conversational, it's there when you need it, so that you can get things done in the real world. And we are working to make it even better. We want the assistant to be something that's natural and comfortable to talk to. And to do that, we need to start with the foundation of the Google Assistant, the voice. Today, that's how most users interact with the assistant. Our current voice is codenamed Holly. She was a real person. She spent months in our studio, and then we stitched those recordings together to create voice. But 18 months ago, we announced a breakthrough from our DeepMind team called WaveNet. Unlike the current systems, WaveNet actually models the underlying raw audio to create a more natural voice. It's closer to how humans speak. The pitch, the pace, even all the pauses that convey meaning. We want to get all of that right. So we've worked hard with WaveNet, and we are adding, as of today, 6 new voices to the Google Assistant. Let's have them say hello.
Good morning, everyone.
I'm your Google Assistant.
Welcome to Shoreline Amphitheater. We hope you'll enjoy Google I/O.
Back to you, Sundar.
Our goal is one day to get the right accents, languages, and dialects right globally. WaveNet can make this much easier. With this technology, we started wondering who we could get into the studio with an amazing voice. Take a look.
Couscous, a type of North African semolina in granules made from crushed durum wheat. I want a puppy with sweet eyes and a fluffy tail who likes my haikus. Don't we all? Happy birthday to the person whose birthday it is. Happy birthday to you. John Legend. He would probably tell you he don't want to brag, but he'll be the best assistant you ever had.
Can you tell me where you live?
You can find me on all kinds of devices, phones, Google Homes, and if I'm lucky, in your heart.
That's right. John Legend's voice is coming to the assistant. Clearly, he didn't spend all the time in the studio answering every possible question that you could ask. But WaveNet allowed us to shorten the studio time, and the model can actually capture the richness of his voice. His voice will be coming later this year in certain contexts so that you can get responses like this.
Good morning, Sundar. Right now in Mountain View, it's 65 with clear skies. Today, it's predicted to be 75 degrees and sunny. At 10 a.m., you have an event called Google I/O Keynote. Then, at 1 p.m., you have margaritas. Have a wonderful day.
I'm looking forward to 1 p.m. So John's voice is coming later this year. I'm really excited we can drive advances like this with AI. We are doing a lot more with the Google Assistant. And to talk to you a little bit more about it, let me invite Scott onto the stage.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning.
Coffee person or tea guy?
Coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon.
What's the first thing you do when you wake up every morning?
I wear my running shoes.
What's on your work desk right now?
Too many computers to count.
What's on your smartphone home screen?
The number one icon, Wunderlist.
Comic Sans. Good or bad font?
Good font.
Favorite workday time waster?
Cortana jokes.
Favorite personal possession?
Oh, a cricket bat signed by Sachin Tendulkar.
Would you rather go to a Clippers game with Steve Ballmer or play bridge with Bill Gates?
I think I'll go to a Clippers game with Steve Ballmer.
How do you run a meeting?
Listen more, talk less, and be decisive when the time comes.
The one trait that I look for in new hires is?
Do they create clarity? Do they create energy?
If you could explain cricket rules to someone in the US, what's the one thing you would tell them?
It's impossible.
Who's been the greatest influence on you?
My parents. My dad is an economist, leftist, Marxist. My mom was a Sanskrit drama professor. They could hardly agree on anything, so therefore it gave me the room to form my own opinions. But they had great values, and that helped.
What's the best professional advice you've ever been given?
Believe in yourself more so than you think you do. I am Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft. All right.